Okay, so welcome everybody to the third month of our Student Coach Mentoring webinars. Today is the 30th of April 2018 and we have 5 people, including myself, on board. Very shortly we'll have a look at introducing ourselves. That's probably the first thing we should do. So I might start with whoever's on my top, which is Angela Mancini.
Hello.
Introduce yourself to the rest of the team.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Angela. I'm a teacher. I teach VCAL to students with special needs. I've started this course diploma of coaching because I'd like a career change. In the past, I've done training in leadership and did bits and pieces of coaching, which kind of got me interested in this area. So that's me in a nutshell. So hello everybody.
Hi.
Thanks, Angela. Christine, over to you now.
Okay, so I'm Christine Buckley. I'm a little technical challenged, and apart from that, I studied life coaching about 10 years ago, and so I'm now doing a diploma in professional and leadership coaching, which I'm absolutely enjoying. I currently have a day job where I'm a trainer and educator of carers with who care for someone who has a mental illness from between North Sydney and the Central Coast. So that is keeping me probably a little bit too busy at the moment for my liking. However, I am learning to manage that, and our assessments have been very good in keeping me focused with that as well. So yeah, that's me.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Christine. Angela McCormack on the phone.
Hi everybody, calling in from Northwest New South Wales, where I'm currently have just started this course. I think this is week 2, and I'm currently just starting also 9 months sabbatical long service leave from New South Wales Government. So I'm using this time. My aim is not to go back. So I'm using this time to learn some new skills, to take me down a new career path. I think I've got some great skills that I can develop through coaching in my previous job, and just love to be able to give back to others, particularly young women in regional areas, and coaching them to let them think that they can be more, and they can actually be more than just a checkout chick at Woolies or a mother or a single mother. So that's one of my goals in doing this course.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Angie. I'm just going to go to Joe now, but I've got a little bit of something in the background, so I'm not sure. Darren's come on board.
Can I just say, Susan, I do apologise, it's probably me, but I can't even unmute this thing now because the wheels are just spinning crazy. So okay. Unless I shut the whole thing down, so maybe I should do that.
No, don't shut it down because you might not get back on.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. So I'm sorry about the noise, but
that's all right. We'll play with that. That's no problem. Jo, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jo. I've transitioned from a corporate career into providing consulting services. So I specialise in helping executives solve and business owners solve complex problems. And having led a number of performance turnarounds and transformation programs, I'm really interested in utilising what I learn in this environment to help executives better manage transition programs.
Great. Thanks very much, Jo. Lovely to see you. Finally, yeah. You've been in and out of our program for a while, haven't you? And
yep.
Had a few causes for interruption, so it's nice to see you having the time now to focus on it. Yeah. Darren, are you with us? Can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, got you now. That's good. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, I am going through a complete career change. A little while ago, I went and saw a professional coach and sought some clarity on my direction, and things definitely narrowed down. And sorry about the noise. I should close the door. So some of the possibilities for me were teaching, coaching, and counselling, and so I've decided to look at the coaching area. So it's a lot of change for me, and that's where I'm at the moment, which is great.
Great, thank you very much, Darren. So Darren, I'll meet up with you in Perth in June.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
I am. Yeah.
And a few other buddies that we're going to actually have a gathering of a few of the graduates over there as well. It's I think there's a lovely chapter and nice group of people over there who are studying and or graduated, and
that's really good.
It will be good for you to get in touch with all of those. So looking forward to it. All right, let's move on then. So tonight we're focusing on Unit 3, and for those who, has anyone done Unit 3 at all?
No, not yet.
No, possibly not.
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'm not going to do all of the unit. What I'm going to do with you is there's 10 particular techniques that we use in coaching. So I'll do a bit of an intro, first of all, to NLP. And usually what I also do is do some case studies, but there's so much in this unit that I think I'll just stick with trying to explain the 10 coaching techniques and where they're useful in the coaching process. Now, as we know, NLP is a huge area. It's absolutely a wonderful thing to do. The founders are here, Grinder and Bandler. They were the two guys who put it all together. They're still alive and kicking as far as I know. And what they did was they actually took a leaf out and did some research from 3 of the most wonderful people in the therapeutic industry at the time. So over here we've got Fritz Perls, who's the founder of the Gestalt therapy. And I just love Gestalt. I've got 12 months of training behind me in Gestalt. What Gestalt means is whole, looking at the whole picture. So where does some part fit in with the whole picture? Virginia Satir is a family therapist, and so her contribution to NLP is from a linguistic point of view. So what's the language that we put things in place with? And of course Milton Erickson, who's a guru in terms of being one of the instrumental hypnotherapists, psychotherapists of his era, around about the 1960s, all of this team work. And Milton's contribution is in terms of brief therapy and solution-focused therapy. I don't know if you know the story of Milton Erickson. He was a lad at 17 who was struck down by polio, and he could not walk, he could not talk, he couldn't eat. So he, by sheer observation of his little sister, who was starting to crawl at the time, taught himself to walk. Observation, he taught himself back to talking. And so he developed some very uncommon therapeutic approaches, which Jay Barney has put together into a book called Uncommon Therapy. So these were the early influences, and these two guys then started to focus on these 3 people and say, what on earth is it that these 3 people do that makes them so very special, that gets them such successful results? And out of it came their Frogs into Princes book, book 1 and book 2. Book 1 is quite readable, book 2 is quite indecipherable, I think. I had trouble getting through it. So that's the basis of NLP. And what is NLP and why do we do it? 2 very important reasons, and there's lots more as well, but principally for effective communication. And the way that we do that is both verbally and non-verbally. So developing rapport, principally using our non-verbal body language, our observations, our use of detail, as our resonating with the words that people say, helping people to reframe what they're doing and how they're doing it, and look at things from different perspectives. And then, of course, going into anchoring positive experiences and at times negative, and I'll talk to you about that and when we might use that. Not so often it's a positive, because what we're on about is positive psychology coaching. It's all about what we can do better, what we can do more effectively, how we can utilise people's strengths, how we can put them in the driver's seat, on the front foot. So all of these NLP techniques are framed around doing this with our clients, okay? If we do nothing else with clients, then sit down with them and teach them how to more effectively communicate with others, how to more effectively build rapport with others. Then, of course, you've changed their world, because their interpersonal relationships just change from so much for the better. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. I've just done a professional coach training program in Melbourne, and one of the ladies there, Farah, was saying she's got 2 children, how much doing the course and all of it has helped her with her relationships with her children and her interactions. And she was telling me about talking things through with her husband. And that would be something that she might never have done before or done as well before. So the whole NLP is just fantastic. And we only use part of it, just the 10 techniques that we use. But I would encourage you strongly, if you are interested in NLP, to take on the whole course later on. For those of you who may be coming to the September workshop in Sydney, or even the May one next month in Brisbane, it's almost May tomorrow, isn't it? Dr. Heidi Heron is our NLP expert, and she comes very well qualified. She's actually just got her MCC from the ICF, which means she's got 2,500 hours of coaching. Can you imagine that? 2,500 hours of coaching. And so she comes to our Brisbane workshop and does a day of NLP with people. And I think we're just about to put out a last call for people to come to Brisbane to our workshop and take part in that process. But she will also be presenting in September, but we will be using her offices in Sydney when we do the workshop in Sydney in September. Okay, moving right along. What is NLP? I'll just do this very briefly with you. So neuro-linguistic programming is about your neurologic, your thoughts, your neuroscience, the way that we use our senses to understand what's happening around us. It's about the language that we use, how we reframe the language, how we match the language of the client as best we can, so that we can then match them and then lead them. And it's about programming, how we can reprogram our mind and our thoughts, because as we know, before we can change our behaviour, we have to change our mindset. So if we're thinking negative thoughts, then we're never going to look at in terms of being positive about our future. If we're hanging out with negative people, we're going to have a harder time to actually take ourselves forward into positive territory. So it's about infusing our minds and our thoughts with everything that's positive, that's forward-looking, and that will help us and propel us towards a new future that we want. If at any time you've got queries or questions, please just ask or unmute yourself if you have muted yourself, and I'll just keep on going. Now, I will labour these presuppositions of NLP because they're basically where we're coming from in our coaching philosophy. There is a positive intention motivating every behaviour and a context in which every behaviour has value. So we do acknowledge and support and unconditionally support the client. We don't necessarily accept always their behaviour, but what we know is that whatever they're doing is serving a purpose, and it's our job to uncover what is the purpose of that behaviour. Once we uncover the purpose, we can then help them to reframe their behaviour and to do something differently to meet their purpose. If some of you have read the NLP, you'll find that there's a little igloo man, Eskimo man, who wants to get underfloor heating in his igloo. And the boss says to him, what's the purpose? What do you want underfloor heating? And he says, because I want to keep my feet warm. And the boss says, okay, well, I'm just going to give you some new warm socks, really thick socks. So there's always a different way of doing something once we know the purpose. And then we see the behaviour with its true intent. Obviously, the second one speaks loudly. The positive worth of the individual is held constant, while the value and appropriateness of internal or external behaviour is questioned. There's no such thing as failure. It's all feedback about what didn't work that time or in that situation or for that person in that context. The ability to change the process by which we experience reality is often much more valuable than changing the content of our experience of reality. So once we can change the process, we can have a different experience and experience reality in a different way. The resources an individual needs in order to effect a change are already within them. This is a great approach from the coaching has. We don't tell the client what to do. Coaching is not telling, coaching is asking. And we ask powerful questions to uncover what resources the client has available to him or her and how they can dig deeper to find the resources within themselves which they know is there. And it's only absolutely when we have to, for example, offer them a suggestion that we ask permission to do so, and then we do it tentatively and let them choose if that's what they want to do. The map is not the territory. What this means is that where we think we're going is not necessarily where the client may be. We can see things only from our point of view, and the client is the same. So our job as a coach is to try and get into their head, to understand them, to understand what they're on about, and really understand what the map is from their point of view, not from ours. And of course, when we're communicating with somebody, if we're communicating and we get a foreign response or a different response, then we're obviously not communicating well. So you understand that you're in sync with the client if you're getting the response that you think that would be appropriate to the sort of question that you're asking. And lastly, all distinctions that we as human beings are able to make concerning our environment and our behaviour can be represented through our 5 senses, and we'll talk some more about those. Principles of NLP are really important as well, and you might look at those as part of your coaching philosophy. You always respect the other person's model of the world, the map is their territory. You identify their representational preferences, which are the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic. And the reason we do that is so that we can get on the same wavelength of think. You are in charge of your mind and therefore your results, and we expect the client to subscribe to that as well. And so the results that we get from coaching are going to be co-results. It's going to be the actions that the client decided, but we have joint accountability to help the client get through those actions. All procedures should increase choice. So what's the use of coming to a coach if we can't help that client increase their options and their choice and their chance of success? And resistance is merely a sign that we haven't developed rapport well enough, and so we need to go back and develop better rapport with the client. So there were ways to do that as well. Any questions so far?
All good.
Oh, good. Okay, so here are our 5 senses: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. The majority of people are visual, about 93% of the population. Auditory is less so, probably about 5 to 7. Kinesthetic, about 3% of the population. So you'd be on a winner if you thought that most of your clients are going to be visual. However, you need to test it out, because we both know when we assume, we make asses out of you and me. So if the client is more auditory, and we're doing the auditory thing now, although we have some visuals going on, we don't have kinesthetic, although you have a chance then to manage your mute button and your unmute button. So we're trying to use our 3 modalities when we're doing webinars. When we get into looking at creating a good future and a compelling future for the client, we're going to ask them to go into their sense of smell and their sense of taste as well. And we use that primarily when we're trying to get them to create this wonderful future that they want for themselves. So to give you an example, my dream one day is to get to Tuscany. I like the thought of Tuscany. It might be just that, what's the name of that lady? That actress who does that. There was a movie about Tuscany. I can't remember the name.
Is it Under the Tuscan Sun?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Except I can't remember the actress, I'm sorry.
Yeah, her name's Jane, I think. No. But anyway, I love it. So my vision, in say 5 years' time, is to take myself to Tuscany, be sitting there overlooking the bay. And I think now I found Tuscany is not it's in the middle of the land. It's not overlooking the sea. So I might have to drive down to the sea somewhere. Have you been there, Jo?
Yes, you will have to drive.
So I'm going to drive myself to the seafront. I'm going to sit there overlooking the water, hearing the waves, sitting there smelling the coffee in a cafe, eating baguettes and having the butter melt and drip down my fingers and licking my fingers and getting all that. So you're getting a visual, you're getting a sound, you're getting a taste, you're getting a smell. You want to put the client in that sort of an environment. And Darren, when I come over to Perth to do the workshop with you, I'm going to get you guys doing all those sorts of things, right?
Yep.
With your vision, whatever your vision is of where you want to be. And I'll give you a heads up, not only for Darren, but for others coming on the workshops. You need to come with about 3 issues that you would be prepared to share with the group. And I mean, it's a closed group, so you can be quite safe with the group. Issues may be in relation to work, it may be in relation to kids or family, career or whatever. But we find that if you can come with your issue and we can coach you on that issue and you gain some insights, you're going to experience coaching as you've never experienced it before, okay? Which is what we want you to do with your clients. You're going to feel it within your whole body. You're going to be so whopped at the end of the day, I can tell you, that you're just going to go home exhausted. So don't plan to do anything on those nights that you come to the workshop with us, because you're going to be either so excited or so exhausted, one or the other.
Both.
So, both.
Sounds interesting but frightful.
Interesting, yeah, excitedly excited. So, and those of you who've been coaching before, well, you may not be quite as excited, but anyway. So I like to think we've got a pretty hands-on, practical approach to coaching. Okay, good so far? Now, in addition to those 5 senses, you're also going to look at the finer distinctions that we can make. So if you've got something visual, like my Tuscany example, I can actually suggest, and a technique that I use with clients is I suggest that they put it on a television screen in front of them, right? So I can imagine myself there in Tuscany, sitting with that TV screen, taking a snapshot, or with my iPad taking a snapshot. And then I can, with my fingers, I can reduce the size of it, make it smaller, make it bigger. I can, with a very smart iPad, I can change the shape. I can put it into a circle, not a square. I can change the colour. I can actually give it like a bright sunset colour or a deep blue colour of the water. I can change the focus so that I use potentially like a telescope, and I can potentially telescope out to that ship on the horizon, which is far away. And then I can bring that ship back in and potentially see the people on board that ship. And I can see them moving, and I can see some people standing on the railing, and I can see them waiting for the sun to go down and the light getting dimmer. So can you see how you can use all of those submodalities, those finer distinctions, for auditory and kinesthetic as well when you're working with a client? And it's quite exciting because you get a nice sense of that imagery and that compelling future with them when you do that. So that's what you're in for. Any comments? Okay.
Oh, good.
So what is rapport? Because the first thing we have to do with a client when we meet with them, the very first meeting, is we need to find out how well we gel with them, how much synchronicity there is with them. So it's a state of mutual trust and responsiveness between individuals or groups, being in sync, same wavelength, commonality. And there it is. Physiology and tonality account for a lot. But of it, words only mean 7%. So what you say is only worth 7%. How you say it is worth 38% of the communication. And your body language that supports it or disconfirms it is worth 55% of the body language. Which is why it's always good to meet with the client in person before you start coaching them, if you possibly can. And if you can't meet with them in person, do it on the Zoom, do it on the Skype or whatever. You get a feel for people when you see them. You see what they're sitting, you're seeing how their posture is. You're seeing whether they're making eye contact, whether they're turning their head to one side or another, whether they're staring into space and not really with it or not, okay? All of these things you notice. This is the Milton Erickson stuff. Be as observant as you possibly can about non-verbal language. That will give you lots of clues as to the degree to which you are making rapport with the client. One key sign that you have got rapport is if the client starts to relax back in their chair, sit back, and you'll see them visibly sort of slumping and saying to you, now, what's all this coaching about? And then you know you can get on with the coaching. The other part of NLP is about the eye movements, and this is where we'll do a little bit more work on the workshops when we get there. What they've discovered, Bandler and Grimmer, is that people, when you ask them a direct question and watch their eye movements, if they're visualizing, trying to visualize either remembering or constructing, they will look up. Their eyes will look up. And if they're remembering, they'll look up to the right. And if they're constructing, if they're remembering, they'll look up to the left. If they're constructing, they'll look up to the right. So left is our past, right is our future. And I can see Joe's eyes going up now.
Oh, well, I'm just thinking about it because I remember reading this in the module and I thought it was really quite interesting. So I'm just reflecting on what you're thinking about how I respond.
Yes, of course. And so if someone is auditory, you'll probably find their eyes go sideways, to the left to recall a sound, and to the right to construct a sound. And if they're kinesthetic, you'll see that their eyes tend to go down, okay, where they're remembering and they're feeling. So they're remembering to the left and they're trying to feel. Also down to the right is the little words that we say to ourselves. You know, I can do this. What makes you think you can? You know, when we're having a little conversation with ourselves. So I'll probably leave that to the workshops to explain a bit more about it, because you really need to be there and experience that and watch people. But as a starting point, you can start eyeballing people as you have a conversation with them, just surreptitiously, and just notice if their eyes go up, sideways or down, okay? And then look at Unit 3 and get some more details about left to remember and right to construct. Okay. Because what happens when we're having a conversation with someone is we get overloaded with information. There's so much information, not just with that person, but with the surrounds, with the context, the things happening in the background, with my phone's just been going off, and I'm sure yours will be. Other people talking as they're coming past, chatter, chatter, chatter. So we have to make sense of everything that comes into our brain, and we can't possibly process it all at once. And this is where people with ADHD have trouble, because they cannot stop, they cannot filter as well as regular people can. So they need help potentially with medication. We can process 7 plus or minus 1, so 5 to 9 pieces of information at a time. And what helps us to process that information is whether when we delete some of it, we delete the parts that we don't think are important to us at the time, we distort some of that comes to us, and we have to distort it because we have to try and understand it in terms of our frame, our map, our territory, and our experiences, and so that it makes sense to us and we get some meaning from it. And then we try to generalize it and put that into our system and our understanding so that we can respond to it appropriately. So those processes of deletion, distortion, and generalization are typical of every human being, including those who have trouble, you know, censoring their input from the external world. And it's necessary, and this is why sometimes we say, oh, I didn't get that bit, or oh, I forget. Which is why when we're coaching, we want you to listen really, really well, to take notes as appropriate when you've asked for permission, but also then to go back and summarise with the client, because if you're not getting the whole picture, you're not understanding the client's situation completely. So we'll use all these processes when we listen in the coaching session. This is the NLP communication model. So to explain it, you've got an external event coming into your frame of reference. We then come through our filters, we delete, distort and generalise, but also through all the other filters we have in our mind as well. So, you know, what happens in terms of time, space, energy and matter, the language that we use and they use, and words they use, our memories, right? Our meta-programs that we have running in our head all the time to keep us safe, our values, our beliefs, the decisions we've made, and our attitudes, and all of that stuff is happening in our mind at the one time. There's a lot going on. So we then form an internal representation of what that message is all about. However, we're influenced by our state of the mind at the time. Are we open? Are we responsive? Are we looking for some different perspectives? Or is our mind pretty closed and we just don't want to do anything differently? And what's our physiology like? Are we feeling upbeat? Are we sad? Are we happy? Are we excited? What's happening there physiologically for us? Because that will interfere with our communication as well. And of course, out of all that comes our behaviour, which in our case is going to be the response to the message. So you can see it's fairly complicated in terms of what happens once that external event triggers all of that going on in our mind within seconds to give a response. Now, with some people, the response is not adequate, it's not appropriate. And this is why when some people blurt out things, we try as a coach to say to them, how about you might count to 10 before you start to say something, because it's fairly complicated. Communication is fairly complicated. Any questions about all that?
No, it's all good.
Good here.
Yep, good.
Okay. So here's the first of our 10 coaching techniques. This one we don't use so much, like to dislike. The time when we might use it. Joe, have you got any thoughts about this? I think you've read that module.
I have. I've highlighted it.
Yeah.
I'm just I did it over Easter, to be honest with you, Susan, and I haven't done my assessment yet. But like to dislike? No, I'm sorry, you've called me on that. I can't remember.
That's okay. So we don't use it very often. It would be, for example, if a client came to you and wanted to lose weight and they liked sugary drinks, they liked Coke and chips and all that sort of thing, or they like chocolates. Oh, I love chocolates. But if they go to excess and they're putting on weight and wanting to desist from those sorts of things, so to make their life healthier, for example. So if you take the likes of Coke, okay, that would be something. They wanted to not like Coke anymore, all right? So you look at the colour of Coke, it's brownish or whatever. You try and get them to elicit the look and the shape and the feel of Coke, okay? So you could say, well, it's brown, it runs down your mouth like treacle, for example, runs down your mouth, yeah. So then you break state. Now, break state just means you get up and you do a little dance in the hall, or you shake your head, or you watch TV or whatever. Or you say, what am I going to have for breakfast? That sort of thing. That's breaking state, okay? Then you elicit the submodalities of a similar substance that you dislike. So the dislike could be treacle. I hate treacle. I intensely hate treacle. But it looks the same. It's brownish and it goes down your throat, and the treacle, again, it tastes yucky compared with how Coke might taste. So you get them then to map the dislike of treacle onto the like for Coke, okay? So every time they think about taking a sip of Coke, it's going to taste like treacle and it's going to go yuck in your mouth, okay? And that's how you get them to dislike substances that are not good for them. And then, of course, you've got to try it out later on and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you've got to do it all over again, okay? I won't labour it because it's not one of our most utilised coaching techniques.
Can I ask, Susan, how effective is it? Because when I was reading it, I remember the, stand up and do this and, to break that state. And I was intrigued by it, but I'd be interested in understanding how successful it is as a technique.
It's quite successful as a technique when you know how to do it properly and you practiced it and you can use it properly. Now, in our course, we don't get you to practice this very much, okay? So you don't have enough practice to actually make it effective. But you could try it on yourself, Jo.
I know.
Did you do that?
No, because I was reading this on a plane. I literally was doing this on holiday and I just was like, oh, God, I thought it was quite interesting, the whole stand up and, try and
you could have gone up and done
the way the process is articulated. I just thought, okay, right. I just found it interesting and I was interested in understanding its success.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's quite successful, and we've had students going through who are health coaches, for example, and this is very pertinent to them because one of our guys was a weight loss consultant and had lost 50 kilos himself.
Wow.
So from 100 kilos to 50. So he was very keen to do his own weight loss program with people, and he would use this technique. Okay,
cool.
So what we do is in the courses teach you all of these techniques that you can mix and match or use as appropriate to your frame of coaching, okay? But you'll come out with an excellent repertoire of coaching tools, basically, for any client who might walk through the door. All right, second one is the agreement frame. Now, we use this all the time, so you'll need to know about this. And this is, of course, consistent with our positive psychology coaching, because we're wanting to agree with people. We're wanting to say yes more often. And it's particularly useful for parents, particularly when you're trying to boost the self-esteem of children and not be hard on them. But it's also good for bosses when, their direct reports come up and say, hey, manager, can I do this or whatever. So the technique is about how we can agree with people and say yes more often. So we want them to put themselves out there with agreeing with them. So I agree and I appreciate and I respect and. So there's never a but. And the reason being, the but stops you straight away, it slaps you right in the face, and you know immediately the person hasn't meant what they said before. As a society, we always do that. We always do, yes, I like that, but I want it in a different colour, okay? Or, okay, I'll give him a call, but I can't do it till tomorrow. So it's, I like that, and do you have it in another colour? I'll give him a call, and would tomorrow be okay to contact him? So that's the reframe, and we'll get round to reframing shortly. So A says, we've got so much work to do to complete the project. We're going to have to work late to get everything finished on time. And B says, I agree that we have a lot to do. So you're agreeing You can agree with in principle, you can agree with the content. And I think that if we go home now and recharge our batteries, we'll finish the job in half the time tomorrow. Now, what can you disagree with about that? So this is where we change our language to communicate differently with people. Just by using this one frame, you might find that things improve for you communication-wise. The next frame along the same lines as the purpose frame. It's what I was saying about the Eskimo and the Igloo office. The purpose frame is a linguistic tool that we use to satisfy the purpose of the person's request without necessarily giving them what they actually want. So I've given you that example already. Let's have a look at perhaps a workplace example. Okay, so a direct report comes to you and says, manager, I really would like the afternoon off. Is that okay with you? And the manager would say, tell me a little bit more about it. What's the purpose of taking the afternoon off? And the employee might say, well, I worked late last night into the night and I'm really tired now, and I feel that if I go home now, I'll come back tomorrow with a bit better spring in my step. So the manager should say, yes, of course. Okay. Or the employee might say, look, I really need to go and be at the sports carnival for my child. And the manager will say, well, okay, well, you've got these reports and these meetings to attend to. How are you going to manage that? And the employee would say, well, if I give the meeting to so-and-so to do and I just finished the report, is that okay if I take the time off? And so the purpose is met from both manager's perspective, because he's getting his meeting attended and he's got his report done, and the employee is getting their time to go to the sports carnival. Okay, so what is the purpose? What's the higher order? And if it's a purpose that you can agree with, that's fine. Or if you don't agree with the method, then you can change the method but still get the purpose achieved. Now, with the sports carnival example, there was no possible way that you could do that another time. So you simply have to go along with it. Okay. All right, the what if frame is one we use all the time as well. We use this one particularly when we're looking at creating a compelling future for the client. It's and particularly if the client is feeling a bit resistant to what you're talking about and saying, nah, can't possibly do that. That doesn't make sense to me. That wouldn't work. So if you're getting those sort of responses, you either need to go back and develop rapport, or you need to start using a what if frame. So the example would be, what if it could work? How would that be for you? What if you did know what the underlying reason was why someone was not coming to our meeting? What would it be? So here's a friend who says, I will never get that promotion, I just don't have what it takes. And you respond, well, what would happen if you did get that promotion? Let's just imagine that you did. If you had that promotion now, what would your life be like? What skills and abilities would you have? So it's turning it around. This is this linguistic reframe into a what if, and getting the person to imagine that it's actually happening right now. They're right in that space. They're right there in Tuscany with you, with me. They're right there in the promotion. They're right there in their future. And this one is all the time a linguistic reframe, or frame that we use. Okay. So what's my purpose frame with going to Tuscany? My purpose is simply to have a holiday and enjoy myself and not do any work. I can probably do that somewhere else. In fact, I've actually just come back from a week in Phuket. So I guess that gave me my holiday and away from work for a week. Anyway. Okay, so those three are important. The agreement, that's really important. The purpose frame and the what if frame. Utilising positives is really important as well. So say it the way you want it to be. So, because the unconscious mind cannot process a negative. In other words, we can't think of something we don't want to think about without thinking about it. It's just like, where's the elephant in the room? Don't think about the elephant in the room. What do you think about? The elephant in the room. So don't even mention it. So when you're dealing, particularly let's say with children or with people, say, do the best you can. Get me that report. I know you can get me that report by 5 o'clock tonight. I'm counting on you. Okay. I trust you that you'll give me your very best attention. Right? It's always framing it positively and expecting that that will be the outcome. Now, let's face it, 9 out of 10 times that will be the outcome. And if it's not going to be the outcome, what you rely on with your team or your friend or whoever it is, your colleague, is to say, hey, so-and-so, I know I said that I would get that to you by tonight, but really, I've just been overburdened with this, that, and the other. Can I get it to you tomorrow morning? And so that's a renegotiation. And it's an agreement that it needs to be done. So it's an agreement frame and a negotiation that can we do it in a different way. And of course, when people come to you like that, you want to say yes to them. You want to say, yes, that will be okay.
Mm.
So it's always utilising those positives. At times, we need to utilise negatives. Now, this could be useful if you have a client who particularly likes to be challenged, who likes to do things their own way, who thinks they can do it as well as they possibly can, but who really is either coming to coaching because they have been sent to coaching or because they think, oh, who's this person who thinks they can do something better than me? So there's a bit of a challenge going on there. So you either have to go back and create rapport again, or you have to say to him, hey, look, I know this is not quite your bag. And I know that perhaps you've been encouraged to come along by your wife or your manager or someone. But hey, can we just park that aside for a minute and just see if there's anything here that we can talk about that I can help you with? Okay? So you're utilising the negatives. This test is going to be difficult. So this coaching session may not be your bag, but let's just try and focus on what we can achieve together in the next hour. Okay? Whilst I wouldn't suggest this coaching session will be easy, or it may be easy for you, maybe you walk in the park, maybe we'll just have a chat for an hour, but at least we will have completed on something that your manager wanted you to do, to have a chat with me. Are you willing to go along with that? So you're always asking for their willingness to go along with you and get some sort of an outcome. And usually they will, even if it's just to have a chat and tell their manager, well, you know, that was easy, we just had a chat. However, you might be then able to create that rapport that you need to help the client move forward. The next one we use a lot is utilising ambiguity. Now, this is particularly useful when you want to influence someone else's thinking, but if you directly ask them to do something, it can be interpreted as telling them what to do, and it may lead to resistance. So we all know that coaching is about asking a better question, asking a more powerful question. So you need to then ask or suggest an outcome that you desire, and then they can choose to accept or reject your suggestion. So they're in control. They're in command all the time. But you're just putting forward some suggestions to them. Now, you could say, it would be ever so useful if you don't mind, I'd like to put forward an idea to you that's occurring to me. I don't know whether it's going to fit for you, but it might. And if it does, it may help to take you on the next step in your journey. Or an alternative, you could say, perhaps you might like to consider X, Y, Z. So I find this useful when you've got someone who's particularly black and white, right or wrong, so at the extremes. And I think about it in terms of a 1 to 100 scale. So if you can imagine a scale on one hand, 1 to 100 on the other, hold your hands out, like spread them out, and in between there's a space. And in that space, I call it the grey space. And in that space, I suggest to the client that they might go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, etc. in that grey space. And if I can just get the client to move from 1 to 2, that to me is a great achievement. To consider something different from what they might be hanging on to and not wanting to let go of. So to consider a little bit might be different, or what they're thinking in a certain context may be different in a different context, or different for a different person. Okay? So I'm always working with the ambiguities. Now, a caution before you use the ambiguities is that you may need to ask permission to put in a suggestion. So the other way I use this is when you're working with a client and they get totally stuck in terms of, what do? I've tried everything. I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that. and they've absolutely, we can't help them to dig any further inside their own resources. It's only at that stage that I would say to the client, look, in my experience with coaching, I've come across this situation before, and I have some ideas from working with other people that might be of benefit to you. Would you like me to perhaps tell you about some of those possibilities? So you're asking for permission first before you're suggesting you might like to try this, this or this, okay? And you need to be very careful to always ask for permission first. Otherwise, you'll be seen as telling the person what to do, okay? So when you come on the workshop, I'll be very carefully coaching you how to do that, okay? It's a very useful technique. Any questions?
All good.
Okay.
No, it's fine. It's good.
Okay, so here we come to chunking up, down and sideways. This is very useful as well. And once again, it appeals to the purpose. What's the purpose and what's the intention? So I don't know whether you guys remember or not, but when people come to us to enroll in the coaching course, I often have spoken to them and do speak with them about what's your intention for coaching? Who do you intend to coach? Where do you intend to specialise? How do you think you can help people? So this is where I use the chunking up, the bigger picture, because from my philosophy, I don't want people coming on the course who think, this will just be a walk in the park and I'll just earn millions of dollars and away I'll go. That's not what we're on about in this coaching course. So I'm very clear with people, and I think you are very clear in your own mind too, because I think I've spoke to most of you about what's your purpose, what's your intention of coaching. Then if we have a client and you would say, let's say we've got a client who is sick of work and wants to leave work, right? So you would ask the client, what are some of the details? What's happening at work? How specifically is that affecting him and his family or her? And then you'll say, well, what's your purpose in leaving work? So the purpose of leaving work might be to get another job, or it could be that they just want some time off for themselves, for example. So that's the chunking up. Now you can chunk sideways as well. So if the intention is to get another job, then you say, is your intention to get a job in the same industry, in the same government or private sector? Well, maybe the person says no. Maybe the person's in the government sector and wants to chunk sideways into the private sector, for example. Or maybe the person's into, say, industrial manufacturing, or wants to chunk sideways into an office job. That would be chunking sideways, okay? So it's into a different area. Now, basically with this frame, the communication flows better and is more useful when everyone is involved at the similar sized chunks. So we're all sitting at looking for the detail, or we're all talking about the bigger picture purpose, or we're both talking about chunking sideways into a different industry or into a different job, okay? Where we get out of sync is where I'm asking you about the bigger purpose and you're still in the detail. That's where we get off sync with our client. So when the client is in detail, stay with the detail. We can then try and lead them out of the detail into the bigger picture and look at their purpose and their intention. We don't often chunk sideways, but it is a useful frame to have if you need to. But principally, we chunk up to a bigger purpose and then down. So if the bigger picture purpose is to get another job in the same industry, then we chunk down to the detail and say, what other sort of job would you be looking for? And get some detail around that. So we sit between those two levels mainly. You okay with that? Okay, so we're on to the last two of our techniques. This one is future pacing. So it's about stepping forward into possible solutions as we go into the compelling future for the client. Stepping into the future and fully associating in that future scenario, visually, auditory and kinesthetically. Now with my Tuscany example, what I often do with a client if they're having trouble visualising, and particularly if they're a kinesthetic person, is I get them to stand up and to take a step forward for the next 5 years. So 5 steps forward. and they're 5 years in the future, and then turn around and tell me where they are and what's happening for them. So that's my scenario of overlooking the water in Tuscany, eating my baguette, drinking my coffee, smelling the smells, whatever, 5 years from now, okay? And then I ask them to tell me, what are the goals you've kicked to get to that place 5 years from now? What's the first goal you've had to kick? What's the second goal? What's the third goal? And out of that, you drop out the goals that they have achieved to get to that future. And then, of course, out of that, you can action plan one at a time, one goal at a time. Don't try and action plan all the goals all together. So when you get to doing coach recordings, remember that. Just action plan one goal at a time. Now, when you're doing your coach recordings, and that's not till probably Unit 8, remember it's a client-led agenda. The client is always leading the conversation. If you are doing a lot of talking, like I am now, you're doing too much work. But this is a mentoring program, not a coaching program. And what you want the client to do is, if they've got 5 goals, you ask the client, which one would you like to work on first? And they decide, not you. They decide on the goal they want to start working on. And the goal they want to start working on is usually one that they're most energized to do something about. It doesn't matter where they start. The important thing is that they take some actions and they commit to getting those actions done. So that's what future pacing is about. And then once you do the future pacing, the idea is that you break state, and then you get them to go back and tell you about that desirable future and see if it's the same, see if it's still crystal clear in their mind. And it goes without saying that the more you can have it visually, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, olfactorily secured in their mind, and they can imagine themselves in that picture, it's like a transporter into 5 years from now, the more that future pacing is going to have worked. If it hasn't worked, then you need to go back and do it again, which is a lot of time and effort wasted. So try and do it right the first time. Here I say right. There's no such thing as right. Try and do it as well as you possibly can with the client so that they get fully immersed. Now, if they're resisting, don't push them. If they're resisting, it's because there's something else on their mind, or there's a bigger picture that you're not seeing yet, or there's a problem somewhere and you might need to go back again to the finding out about the problem, what's their situation like. But it's all, it's never failure, it's all feedback, as we know. The last technique that we use is anchoring. And anchoring is a way of associating a desired response or state with a unique stimulus a number of times, the two becoming linked in such a way that when the same stimulus is applied later on, the state will occur naturally. So, for example, with my Tuscany, I can imagine myself in Tuscany, and with an anchor, you can anchor by touching a part of your body. So I'm not quite sure if you can see me. I might just try. So I could anchor my Tuscany experience just by going like that, holding it for 6 seconds, and then breaking state and getting up and moving around or doing whatever I'm doing. And I could come back, and then when I touch, I'm back in Tuscany. Okay. Now I can anchor any number of memories. I can hit my nose, that could be an anchor spot. I can touch my shoulder, that could be an anchor spot. You can see in Tony Robbins, he does that thing on his chest, remember him? So that's his anchoring, okay? Now, mostly we anchor, and you can anchor anything, anywhere. You can have as many anchors as you want, and they're anchored on your body. So that when you go back, touch that, you immediately are transported. What's the usefulness of that? Well, it's if you get upset, if you've had a bad day, if something has happened that you don't want to happen, you can go quietly off into a quiet space and you can just calm yourself down and think about the future. So like this person who may want to leave their government job and they can't, so they might go out at lunchtime and just quietly take themselves into the space where they want to be. Okay. One word about that, sometimes we have negative anchors. I don't encourage it, but there might be times when you want to not put yourself at risk or have some sort of pre-warning or a sign that might say, hey, this is a bit scary or a bit too close to comfort. Okay, so you might want to put a negative anchor in place in that circumstance, but only under those sort of circumstances that you use a negative anchor. So it's a quick, simple, effective method to switch yourself and others into useful and resourceful states whenever you choose to. So those are the 10 techniques. Are there any questions about those before we conclude?
Yeah, if it's okay, Suzanne, can you just explain the negative anchoring? Like, I haven't actually heard anyone talk about negative anchoring.
My understanding of it, and I'm not an NLP expert, is that if we have a situation that we want to, that we think we're going into that may be harmful to us potentially, or if we've had a situation such, perhaps with bullying, for example, or perhaps with somebody who is
or a difficult conversation you have to have or something.
Yeah, well, not so much a difficult conversation, no, but a difficult person or someone that you who you think might be a little bit too familiar with you, perhaps. Okay, so you might just have an anchor that if you're going into a meeting with that person that says perhaps don't sit next to that person, for example, and it might be just okay, or it might be keep quiet in front of that person.
Oh, and so you'd say that, and then you'd anchor yourself.
Anchor yourself. Be quiet in front of that person.
Ah, okay, right. Thank you.
And so it's kind of it is a negative anchor. It's don't say too much in this meeting, for example, because that person is there, and I know that person is a rumour monger, and I don't want anything that I say to be reported back. So I'm just going to be quite careful about what I say.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So it's like a defence mechanism.
It is like a defence.
Okay, protecting yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay, that's good.
So you can put those anchors in place, but as I say, mostly you put in the positive ones. You know, wonderful time at dinner on Saturday night. Geez, that was really nice. I really liked having dinner with those people. They were so nice. Hold it for 6 seconds. And every time I want to be in a resourceful state, oh yeah, I think I'll call those people and get them together for dinner. Okay, because I had such a good time last night. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. So it is an interesting unit. It's a long unit and it's very important. As I say, if you concentrate on these 10 techniques, they're the ones we'll use in coaching. And if you want to learn more, I'm sure Heidi will be able to help you to take the next steps when you finish your coaching course. But finish your coaching course first, please. Okay. Don't get distracted. Okay. The next one is on Monday, the 28th of May. Put that in your diary now, and we'll do a countdown to that. As I say, I'll be sending out a link, or Charlie will on tomorrow, and you'll get a copy of the recording, but it also goes up in the members site under the bonus resources. And you can see, if you've missed the first two, you can see the other two there. I think last time I forgot to start the recording on time, but you'll see a little bit of it left anyway. And next month, we'll be looking at Unit 4, which is about how to coach ethically and responsibly to the International Coach Federation requirements and standards, which is what we're training you to do in the first 8 minutes of the coaching course.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for being on the webinar tonight, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. All the best in between, and hopefully we'll see some more assessments coming through shortly.
Great. Thanks so much, Suzanne. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.